We are convened as of 5:31 p.m., and I would respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to mute yourself unless you are recognized to speak. Please note that the committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors will be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meetings, will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. During today's meeting, we are providing communication access real-time translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Además, la transcripción CART puede ser traducida automáticamente al español para cualquier persona que desee acceder a la transcripción en viva durante esa reunión. Envía un correo electrónico al rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated into Spanish for anyone who would like to receive a live transcript of this meeting by sending an email to the same website. A live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. I would like to call the roll for the committee members. Vice Chair Karen Benker.
Present.
Director Peggy Catlin.
Here.
Director Lynn Geisinger.
Here.
Director Chris Guchenritter has informed me that he will be joining us, but he will be late this evening. Director Matt Larson.
Here.
Director Patrick O'Keefe.
Here.
I am Chair Michael Guzman. Please, everybody, someone interrupt the conversation if you see Director Guchenritter arrive, so that we can keep moving, and just note that he is present in the minutes. Thank you so much. For the record, I am looking to see if there are anybody else joining us this evening. And I am quickly doing that, sorry. I do not see any other directors on my screens. Can someone verify that as well?
That's my assessment as well.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other directors joining us this evening. If anybody does join, we will make sure that we note that in the meeting transcript. I would like to open public comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding month, which would be July of 2025. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your virtual hand or press star 9 on your telephone. During this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please feel free to email the RTD Board of Directors at rtd.directors@rtd-denver.com. Are there any hands raised, Mr. Kroll?
Committee Chair Guzman, there are no hands raised at this time.
All right. I did not see anything in email before I logged in. Were there any comments received that we need to read into the record?
Yes, Committee Chair Guzman, you all received one emailed comment from Greater Denver Transit in relation to a couple items on your agenda for this evening, this being the tap to pay ticket, retail, and the capital improvements or capital projects discussion item.
Thank you. All right. With no participants in the queue, then we will close the public comment period at this time. We do not have any external entity reports for tonight's committee meeting. We do have 3 recommended actions before us tonight, and our goal will be to navigate through them thoroughly and efficiently. As I have done over the last month or so to aid us in our work, I, during the pre-meetings, worked with staff to estimate the time needed for both presentation and discussion for each of our action items and discussion items. Those times were printed into the agenda. I will do my best to keep us on those times. However, our conversation may warrant more or less time on an item as we go through them. Nonetheless, this practice aligns with our operating guidelines, and it has been effective in helping us complete our work diligently. If any committee member or director has feedback on this approach, please feel free to reach out to me after the meeting and let me know what you think and how we can improve. Our first action then is for the District Hoist Replacement Contract Award. This is for the Board of Directors to authorize the General Manager and CEO or her designee to enter into a contract with Rhino Tracks Construction for the renovation of 9 in-ground hydraulic bus hoists at RTD District Shops Division Building. This includes the replacement of 8 hoists and the removal of 1 hoist at the District Shops Bus Maintenance Facility. The base bid award amount of the contract is $4,003,792. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Director
Second.
Larson. Is there a second? Director
And,
Geisinger?
excuse me, the Chair of the, I see Chair Bouquet has joined us as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Hello, Julian. Ms. Chair Bouquet, it's nice to see you.
Second, if you didn't get one. I think Lynn gave you a second.
Yes, Director Larson was the movement, Director Geisinger was the second, and so I would like to ask Jyotsna Vishwakarma, Acting Assistant General Manager of Capital Programs, to present this item to the committee, please.
Thank you, Chair Guzman and committee members. This recommended action seeks to renovate hoists in the District Shops Bus Maintenance Facility. The contract award is outlined on pages 3 and 4 of your board package. So a hoist is a machine that is used to lift up buses so people can work underneath them. These hoists were installed with the original building construction in 1989 and have been repaired and had parts replaced ever since. It is becoming increasingly difficult to continue this practice, and that is why we are seeking to replace 8 hoists and remove 1 hoist. We propose to get newer versions of the bus hoists. They have a smaller footprint and they have better safety and environmental features. They will also be easier to maintain. The project is expected to be completed within 13 months following contract award, and up to approximately 80% of the cost will be paid through a Federal Transit Administration award. The remaining cost will be funded from existing capital improvement dollars allocated in the 2025 budget. Thank you for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on this item.
Thank you, Ms. Vishwakarma. Directors, are there any questions or comments at this time? I also want to make sure that for the record, Director Gutschenritter has joined our meeting. All right, I do not see any hands raised. Going once, going twice. Let's take a vote. Are there any no votes on this action? I see no votes. This passes unanimously to the board. Thank you. Please give me one moment. The second action that we will have tonight is a tap to pay digitization retail network Title VI Fair Equity Analysis. This is for the board to adopt the Title VI Fair Equity Analysis report for the introduction of tap to pay fare payments to comply with federal laws, regulations, and guidelines related to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Director Larson is the movement. Director O'Keefe is the second. I would ask Carl Green, Jr., Director of the Civil Rights Division, and Martin Romero, Transit Equity Manager, Civil Rights, and Jake Bremer of Electronic Fare Collection Manager and Finance to present this item to the committee. I apologize about the last names. Please correct me and let me know if I said them incorrectly. Mr. Green, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Board Chair Guzman. Good evening, members of the board. So as introduced, my name is Martin Romero, Transit Equity Manager. With me today is Jake Bremer, Electronic Fare Collection Manager. And today we will be presenting the Title VI Fare Equity Analysis for the introduction of Tap to Pay, a cash digitization retail network as a new fare media option for RTD. As a reminder, this analysis is required for compliance with federal laws and regulations pertaining to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Our review examined whether adding open payments, the term you will see in the Fair Equity Analysis Report, or more commonly known as tap to pay, which is the term we will be using moving forward, would create disproportionate impacts on BIPOC populations, which is also an acronym for Black, Indigenous people of color, or impacts on low-income customers. So as a reminder, this presentation is in regards to the Title VI Fair Equity Analysis. Next slide, please. So here's an outline of what we will be covering today. So first, we will begin our presentation with a short video explaining the different ways to pay and introducing tap to pay. Then we will be summarizing the proposed fare changes. After that, a brief review of the Federal Transit Administration or FTA requirements for fare changes. Then we will cover our Title VI policies and methodology. We'll cover the key findings and results, followed by our communications and outreach plan. And then we'll end with our conclusion recommendations for board action. Next slide. So with that, let's go ahead and play the video. And kudos to Stuart and team for putting this together.
At RTD, we're focused on making it easy to pay your fare, because how you ride should be as flexible as where you ride. Right now, you've got plenty of options. Pay cash right on the bus. Use paper tickets or passes available online at sales outlets or ticket vending machines. Scan your MyRide app mobile ticket or barcode, or tap your MyRide card, including discounted fares and past programs. And starting in fall of 2025, even more convenient ways are coming. With open payments, simply tap your Visa or Master credit card, debit card, or prepaid card, or mobile wallet right at the validator. It's what we call tap and pay. And with cash digitization, load cash into your MyRide account or card at RTD sales outlets and participating retailers like King Soopers, CVS, Walgreens, and 7-Eleven. RTD is extending payment choices to make riding simpler and more accessible than ever. No matter how you ride, there's a way to pay.
Thank you. And let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. So the proposal is to introduce tap to pay as valid fare payment media on fixed route services. Additionally, we will increase our expand the network of retail locations where customers can load MyRide stored value to 460 locations. One thing to note is that Access-a-Ride and FlexRide will not have validators at this time. Next slide. So the FTA requires all fare changes, including tap to pay, to undergo Title VI equity analysis, which RTD must complete before implementation. Next slide. So this requirement stems from Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination based on race, color, and national origin in federally funded programs. The FTA Circular 47021B provides detailed guidance on transit agencies to implement Title VI and ensure equitable access to services, including fare changes. RTD's board adopted 2025 to 2028 Title VI program establishes the policies and the processes we follow to maintain compliance and defines what constitutes a fare change. So let's go on to the next slide and the details, those titles, and we'll detail those Title VI program policies. So RTD evaluates fare changes before implementation using its disparate impact, disproportionate burden policies. And these policies provide a structured framework to assess effects on BIPOC and low-income customers and ensures equitable service. Next slide. Okay, so prior to initiating the analysis, step one is to determine whether this meets the fare change definition, which includes increases or decreases in price, the addition or removal of fare media such as cash, paper, passes, mobile tickets, changes to products like the day or the monthly pass, adjustments to fare levels such as the standard or the airport passes, and then changes to customer categories such as seniors or live-in youth participants. This also includes modifications to ticket vending machines, ticket vending machine access, fees, or payment options. So by this definition, introducing tap to pay and expanding retail network both qualify as fare change, and therefore fare equity analysis is required as step two to determine if that change will result in a disparate impact or a DI, or disproportionate burden, DB for short. Next slide, please. So our DI policy sets a threshold of 5%. So if a fare change adversely affects BIPOC customers more than 5% above the overall ridership, that is considered a potential DEI. RTD must then explore alternatives, consider modifications, or show legitimate justification, which is step 3 of the process. And then similarly, our disproportionate burden policy sets a 5% threshold for low-income customers. If an impact is identified, RTD will consider practicable changes to mitigate impact. And so these policies ensure that fare changes are equitable and legally defensible. Next slide, please. So let's get into the methodology of how we completed this analysis and the data sources used. Next slide. Our primary data source was the 2024 onboard survey, which provided a statistically valid sample of customer demographics, travel patterns, payment methods, and other characteristics. This is the onboard survey, not to be confused with the annual customer satisfaction survey. And so of the 18,285 respondents, 55% identified as BIPOC. Of the 14,349 who reported income, 63% identified as low income. The survey also asked, do you have a credit, debit, or prepaid debit card? And this question formed the basis of our analysis, helping us determine which customers already have access to the cards needed for tap to pay and which may rely on other forms of payment. Next slide. We also used the MyRide Cash digitization retail network analysis, which examined access to 460 to 500 new retail locations across the district for demographic proximity and access. And so those locations sell prepaid debit cards and allow customers to load cash into MyRide. So together, these sources provide a strong data and assess for equity impacts. Next, we recognized several assumptions and limitations. We assume most modern debit and credit cards will be contactless capable by 2027. We treated the MyRide retail network as a proxy for access to prepaid debit cards in the region. And we also noted that 6 to 8% of customers remain cash reliant. And despite these factors, our combined survey and GIS analysis provides confidence in the results. Next slide. So covering down on key findings for card access, the survey shows that 90% of all respondents, including BIPOC and low-income respondents, have a credit, debit, or prepaid debit card. The results were consistent across groups, with 89% for both BIPOC and low-income customers, as shown in the graphic on the right. Among those without card access, 6% to 8% remain cash reliant, often buying short-term 3-hour passes on board or day passes. The graph showing the 6% to 8% cash reliant customers can be found in board packet page 18. This is also consistent across comparator groups at 5.6% for all customers, 6.5% for BIPOC, and 7.8% for low-income customers. In addition, an additional 3% or 5% are exempt from paying fares or use passes such as EcoPass or College Pass, and this includes youth as well. So again, this information can be found on board packet pages 18 and 19. Next slide. Okay. And now key findings for retail network access. The expanded MyRide retail network added about 460 to 500 new locations. These locations are in areas where 43% of the population is BIPOC, which is higher than the district average of 38%, and where 27% of the population is low income, higher than the district average of 21%. This indicates that the expansion improves access for underserved populations. And so again, many of these retailers also sell prepaid debit cards, which further supports equitable access. Next slide. So taken together, the analysis finds no DI on BIPOC populations and no DB on low-income populations. Tap to Pay increases payment options and extends fare capping benefits to customers who use contactless cards or mobile wallets. And so this change maintains equity in pricing, access, and benefits. Next slide. Okay, so to ensure customer our customers are aware of Tap to Pay, RTD developed the comprehensive multifaceted communications and outreach plan for each initiative. So one for Tap to Pay and one for retail network expansion, which is set to launch in November of 2025. The plan includes news releases, publications, including bilingual English and Spanish materials and read and write articles. Direct emails will be sent to LIFT program customers and transit assisting grant participants, as well as direct emails to our community-based organizations and nonprofit database. Next slide. Additionally, a dedicated website will be created with all information available in 10 languages. Customers will also have access to informational videos, infographics, and email alerts. A social media campaign and community newsletter will extend the outreach to various populations. And lastly, we plan to fan this information out to the community via in-person events. So all in all, this multi-channel approach ensures all customers, including underserved populations, receive the information they need to access Tap to Pay and its benefits, as well as access to retail networks. Next slide. So in summary, Tap to Pay will improve convenience, flexibility, and equity in fare payment. The evidence shows strong and equitable access across all populations, and there is no negative impact on BIPOC or low-income customers. This proposal supports RTD's strategic goal of community value and customer excellence. Next slide. So this presentation and supporting materials ensure that the board is informed of the equity analysis and its results, and has the opportunity to review and approve it before fare change recommendations move forward. So staff recommend approval of the Title VI fare equity analysis for Tap to Pay and cash digitization retail network. Approval will keep RTD in compliance with Title VI and allow the implementation of this equitable fare change. Next slide. All right, thank you for your time and attention. We will take any questions then.
Directors, who has questions or comments? Director Nicholson, your hand is raised. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chair Guzman. I really appreciated this presentation. You guys, I know, have done an incredible amount of work bringing this forward. I do have one question about discounts, because one of the things that other systems have run into in terms of CEMB, Tap to Pay, is how they go about allowing people to enroll in the discount programs, and the ease of which it's possible for someone with, say, a prepaid debit card to sign up to tie their live discount to their debit card, so that when they tap it, they get the reduced fare. And I was wondering, I assume that has equity impacts, because obviously you're dealing with folks who are facing disproportionate burden, or potentially disparate impact, but more specifically disproportionate burden. So I was wondering if that's something that you had looked at, and if any of you can speak to what that enrollment process will look like, and how difficult it is relative to the current process of using your discount.
Chair Guzman, if I may.
Absolutely, thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Green.
Perfect, thank you. Great question, Director Nicholson. Just at a high level with respect to Tap to Pay and special discounts. So essentially, once someone is eligibilized, say for example, the LIV or the income-based program, the way to link their profile, so to speak, with Tap to Pay, it's essentially establishing a MyRide account. So once you have two of those items together, they will be linked to allow folks who are in the special discount programs, whether it be LIV, people with disabilities, older adults, right? They would just link that to the MyRide account to be able to take advantage of Tap to Pay and the MyRide account system. So that has been something that we as staff have looked through in terms of the availability and access to the Tap to Pay with respect to discount programs. Does that answer your question, Director Nicholson?
Yeah, I was waiting for Chair Guzman to give me permission to follow up. Is that
We
okay?
do have a committee member with their hand raised, so I'll give you a quick follow-up, but then
Yeah.
I'm gonna move on to the
Mr.
next
Chair,
person.
you can let Director Nicholson go.
So going into that vein, obviously a lot of people who are low income in many cases don't have smartphones, for example. The question I have is, if you've got a prepaid debit card, how do you link that to your MyRide account so that any taps on your prepaid debit card get that discount? That's the part that we don't really have in the app right now. There's no way to link a credit card. So I'm wondering if that's how that's going to factor in.
I
Mr. Brummer,
will.
would Mr. Brummer like to answer that question? Chair Guzman, is that all right?
That's perfectly fine. Mr. Bremer, please proceed.
If I may, Director Nicholson, the answer to that question is yes, there will be a way to register prepaid debit cards, credit cards, and other compatible CMV cards in the MyRide app and the web dashboard. We don't have a working demonstration of that yet. We do have details on how Mesabi will handle it for our customers, but that is essentially what will happen. It's not functionality that you can see currently, but it will be there.
May I take a moment to request how you pronounce your last name properly? Because I don't want to.
It's Bremer. I just pronounce it like the U isn't there. So
Okay. Thank you very
no
kindly.
worries
I
to
appreciate that.
everyone.
All right. Director Nicholson, did that satisfy your inquiry?
So one very quick question. So for individuals who are indigent, who are, who don't have access to a phone or something like that, is that something that they'll be able to do at our customer service outlets, or are they going to have to go to like the library or something like that in order to be able to enroll and get those discounts?
I don't know who to ask to speak on that one.
I would assume Mr.
Bremer,
Bremer.
That is something that we have are working through in a distribution and communications plan. I don't know if we have covered that exact scenario, but what I will also say is that we have worked with Mesabi to comply with all eligible Colorado accessibility requirements for digital applications. So I think that should help customers that are in that situation as well. That's all the information I can give with that.
And if I may, if I could have one other follow-up to that. So as we think about the overall strategy with respect to tap to pay and ensuring equitable access to all of our customers, this tap to pay is an addition to all of our existing methods for payment. And what I would say in terms of folks that may not have, whether you're unbanked or underbanked or don't have access to a smartphone with internet access, with the MyRide system, i.e. the MyRide card, the reason why we are coupling it with the cash digitization, so folks can be able to load stored value onto their MyRide card, which in turn they can take advantage of fare capping. So this is just a plus gain or a positive in terms of expanding the number of payment types for our customers.
Thank you. Director O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is probably newish director stupidity, but everyone bear with me. You may have even said it. Is there a difference for cash fare purchase on a daily rate versus electronic payment? Do we have a single, if you're buying a ticket for the day, is cash the same as it would be on a tap to pay? I think the answer is yes, but.
That is correct, Director O'Keefe.
Okay, thank you. This is a dumb question. And I just wanted to recognize Director Nicholson's tenacity on this issue from when I first met with him when we were both candidates. I know there are a lot of people that have been looking at this, but I wanted to particularly recognize his work on this. I don't know if it's an amenity as much as a modernization. So thank you, Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I would like to recognize the returning directors who've been working on this for several years as well, because this has been a long time coming, and working through contracts with Masabi, with our contracting department, with Deborah Johnson as our general manager CEO, leading that conversation, at least for the 2 years that I served on the board, and I walked into conversations that were already going on when I joined in 2023. So this is a group effort, as it always is, because we're one RTD. So Director Nicholson taking the spearhead on the conversation and not letting us forget is certainly notable, but we get this work done together.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Any other directors have comments or questions at this time? I would just like to say, gentlemen, thank you so much for your service to the community, the outreach work that you did, and the data collection that you are required to do. I have one question, and that is, in all of this, and I was glad to hear what you just said, Mr. Green. We are in the great state of Colorado, and House Bill 21-1048 requires that all retail businesses accept cash as a form of payment in providing services. So as cool as it is that we are advancing in the technological part, I am greatly concerned that we don't move too far away from the people that are not banked, and cash is the only option that they may have to access our services. And so working with communications and community outreach on how to load a My Ride card with prepayment and other materials, and the increase in available retail locations to load those types of payments to get the fare capping is really, really going to continue to be important. But I see our General Manager CEO has her hand raised, so I will turn it to her.
Thank you very much, Committee Chair Guzman. Greetings all. Deborah Johnson, General Manager and Chief Executive Officer. Want to amplify the comments relative to staff's work. Greatly appreciate that. What's quite notable is that we will have a full-fledged communications campaign recognizing the importance of this amenity in regards to all of our various customer segments. Mr. Summers is online. We plan to provide an update to the board with our communication strategy prior to unveiling this amenity to our customer base, but want everybody to know quite naturally, as long as we're providing public transportation services with the emphasis on being public, we will ensure that we're taking all types of currency, and chances of us going cashless are far and few between just by virtue of our customer segment and the demographic. So thank you very much, Committee Chair Guzman, for your comments. We will be getting out information within the next, I'd say, 4 to 6 weeks prior to, launching the full-fledged program, but that will be something that's critically important to the success of this program, especially when you look at the profile of our customer base. Thank you very much, sir.
Great, thank you. Also, I recognized the voice in the video about 30 seconds after it started, so thank you, Mr. Summers, for lending us your voice in the video. That was pretty awesome. I've heard about your anchor voice, but I've never actually seen it in real life, so that was a treat to see. Thank you so much. All right. Are there any no votes on this matter? With the full contingent of directors on the Finance and Planning Committee, there are no votes, so that passes unanimously, and will also go to the Board of Directors. All right. Time for the third and final action for this evening, and that is the 2026 through 2030 5-year financial forecast. This is for the Board of Directors to adopt the 2026-2030 5-year financial forecast. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Director Guchenreuter is the movement. The second is from Director O'Keefe. I would like to ask our estimable Kelly Mackey, Chief Financial Officer, and Todd Nickel, our Senior Manager of Budget, to present this item to the committee. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Guzman. Good evening, everyone. In this discussion, I'll present the 5-year financial forecast as an action item and ask for approval. The 5-year financial forecast, also known as the FIFE, was previously presented as a discussion item for the Finance and Planning Committee on July 15th. As a refresher, I will overview the financial planning process, some key assumptions that are incorporated in the forecast, the updated forecast, and then go over next steps. The 5-year financial forecast is a 5-year revenue and expenditure forecast that we update annually at this time of the year. The prior forecast was approved in September of 2024. The FIFE is the basis for RTD's budget preparation. It is not an appropriation. The FIFE will be a basis for the 30-year long-range financial plan that is currently in development. We review the FIFE internally in detail and ensure it is aligned with the fiscal policy that is board adopted. It is tied closely to the transit asset management plan. Cross-functional teams go through a process to evaluate and score funding requests with a number of variables. Additionally, business cases are created, evaluated, and adjusted for funding needs and requests. Here's a view of the financial planning process for 2025 and 2026, which shows that the bulk of the 5-year financial forecast internal efforts conclude in August. The 2026 annual budget process is currently underway and concludes typically in November. The asset management plan for 2027 through 2031 began in the spring and it will carry into 2026. And this will feed the updated 5-year financial forecast next year. Overall, the goal of this process is to align the right money in the right year for the right requests and for the right reasons. Fair sales and use tax grants and contributions are projected at low single-digit growth when looking at the compound annual growth rate, or the CAGR. This incorporates the CU Boulder Leads economic growth forecast for sales and use tax that was presented earlier in the year, and an update will be presented to the Finance and Planning Committee on October 14th. According to the fiscal policy, this view incorporates grants that we know we will receive and not potential future funding from grants not yet awarded. We are exploring upcoming opportunities for debt restructuring, which would not transact until next year, so impacts related to those potential activities are not incorporated. We have included an assumption of 3% inflation. Only a subset of materials, parts, equipment, and technology are expected to be affected by tariffs, and we have included a 3% assumption, or $1.2 million in 2026. The FIFE is tied closely to the Transit Asset Management Plan with continued maturities. Importantly, we have aimed to meet RTD's fiscal policy, incorporating reserves for 3 months of operating expense, as well as net revenue coverage of 1.2 for debt repayment obligations in both principal and interest. Net revenue is revenue less operating expense. We are also utilizing capital replacement funds and unrestricted funds according to fiscal policy. Here is a view of the 5-year financial forecast with 2 columns added on the left for the 2025 adopted budget and a 2025 projection, which is primarily first half of the year actuals and second half of the year budget. The 2025 budget was at 0.5 net revenue coverage ratio with 2.1 months of operating reserve, with total expenditures significantly exceeding revenue. Note that we have set the 5-year financial forecast to follow the fiscal policy of 1.2 net revenue coverage and 3 months of operating reserve. Net sources and uses of cash was $472 million in the 2025 budget, and we are continuing with higher expenditures than revenue through 2030 until the unrestricted reserve is utilized. The 2025 budget also includes $280 million in grants and $187 million in expense for the Colfax Bus Rapid Transit. The capital replacement balance in 2030 is expected to be utilized for capital requirements in 2031. The capital replacement reserve is insufficient for projected capital requirements of the existing system and infrastructure, so we have included issuance of additional financing proceeds, such as for buses in 2027. As we discussed in July, RTD staff recommends utilizing the Fast Tracks Internal Savings Account, or FISA, for the West Corridor State of Good Repair and the Flatiron Flyer buses, as the unrestricted reserve and the capital replacement reserves are not sufficient. Here's a similar view, but staff has added the compound annual growth rate on the right column. So you can see that revenue growth is at 4.8%, while the operating expense is at 5.8%. Meaning that expenditures are budgeted to or forecasted to grow faster than revenue. I called out in the box for your reference that operating expense with expense projects as a percent of revenue was 84% in 2024. It was 91% in the 2025 budget. and it is set at 75% of revenue in 2026, or $840 million, in order to balance two key figures. First is the net revenue coverage ratio, so that there is sufficient available remaining funds for debt service, while also balancing to close to zero ending balance of unrestricted reserve in 2030. And I've highlighted these three key figures in yellow for your reference. The next two pages are simply views broken out by the base system and fast tracks for your reference. Here in the fast tracks view, for example, you can see 45 million recommended for the fast track state of good repair. But more importantly, I'd like to draw your attention to the next slide. Now, we are not alone in tightening the belt, as you know. You have seen headlines about SEPTA, TriMet, State of Colorado, and the City and County of Denver. The leadership team and GM CEO Johnson have been meeting and discussing this collectively. And as the governing body, we're bringing this information to you for your awareness. And we're trying to retain the people that comprise this wonderful agency. We do not expect that the updated CU Leads forecast that we will present in October will change the 2026 budget significantly. But in order to achieve our 2026 target operating expense, the staff is exploring potential budget savings opportunities, such as the ones I've listed here, including contract modifications, operations optimizations, merit pay timing, PTO, paid time off sellback, slow hiring processes, and service modifications. So that instead of having operating expense at $908 million that we had in 2024, it's actually closer to $840 million for 2026, based on what our revenue projections are. And that is all I have for this discussion item, action item. So Chair Guzman, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you. Hand shooting up immediately. Vice Chair Banker, you are first in line. Go for it.
Yes, I have many questions, many comments. I'll try to keep them somewhat short and perhaps email you all of my questions. First of all, I apologize for not being at the pre-meeting. I was in Canada traveling, so I was not able to participate. First of all, if we could start on the 2025 capital budget. I went through the current budget book that I have, and I'd like to request an update on all of the capital projects that are listed for 2025 to see where are we, because when I was looking for the one that we just passed just a few minutes ago, the $4 million for the hoist, I didn't see it in the capital budget. Maybe I missed it. But if I could get, or if we could all get an update on where we are on the 2025 capital budget. So then also looking at the capital budgets that you have. Okay, so let me go back and state this 5-year financial forecast is completely different from the one that we saw several months ago. You've got substantially lower sales tax collections, which I understand, I know we're in tough times. Just an FYI, the Governor's Budget Office and Ledge Council should be coming up with their revenue forecasts probably by the end of the month. So you may want to check in with them to see what they're talking about. Because when I was looking at the OSPB forecast for June, they're still looking at sales and use tax increases of at least 1.4%. For the next year, they're looking at over 4%. Now, clearly that can change. But I guess what I'm also thinking is with inflation and tariffs, while people may be backing off on some of their sales purchases, I would think some of the inflationary impact is also going to help keep the sales taxes coming in because costs are just higher when you want to buy something. A couple of suggestions on your table, at least for you to consider. One would be, it would be great to add a line on state grants to your revenue. I realize in your introduction, you stated that you didn't want to put in any money from Senate Bill 230 and Senate Bill 184, but keep in mind that state law has said, we have money for RTD and, please come and ask us for it. So it'd be nice if we could perhaps start thinking about putting in that line. Also, the way we've handled Denver with regard to the Colfax project. You know, just also a consideration, what might be helpful so that when we read this and we see the large increases and decreases is if instead of putting the revenue and the expenditures, just combine it with our revenue and expenditures. Would you consider putting in a separate line that would say pass-through grant to Denver, pass-through expenditures? Because they're not our expenditures, it's not our revenue, but yet when you take a look at those budget numbers, it's confusing because you start to see that we're going from 1.3 million of revenue down to 1.1. Huge drop, but quite frankly, it's because of Denver. That's from what I'm picking up. Let's see. I've got another question. The biggest question, quite frankly, that I have is all of a sudden you've got a new line in there called financing proceeds. I understand when I've asked some questions already, financing proceeds means debt. So when I went back to take a look at the last five-year forecast, there was no debt in here. In fact, when I was looking at how much money was actually supposed to go into reserves, there was quite a bit of money. So now you're taking money out of reserves and you've got $500 million worth of debt coming in the next 5 years. If I'm reading this correct, I'm sorry, Ms. Mackey, am I doing that correct?
I can answer all of your questions.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I've
finished.
had so many, it's like, you know, I've got to keep going here before I lose the floor. But are you planning, or is the executive team planning on going to borrow another 500 million over the next few years?
Okay.
And if so, what would the
Director,
cost be for?
sorry, Vice Chair Banker,
Mhm.
do you want to give a pause so that we can get some answers? Because that was a
Of
whole lot of
course,
questions.
absolutely.
Thank you so much. CFO Mackey, please proceed.
Okay. I think I wrote down the answers, but I'm happy to follow up with you afterwards. So you requested a listing of an update on the capital projects for the 2025 budget. We'd be happy to share that. I did not include 2025 because this is focused on 2026 through 2030, but we're happy to share that. So you said that this changed significantly and the sales and use tax revenue line went down from the July Finance and Planning Committee meeting. But if you actually bring it up, there's no change at all. So the amounts did not change for sales and use tax revenue. It's the same as it was in July. We will present the updated leads forecast next month, but I'll tell you for 2026, very minor increase, but overall for the 5-year period, it did go down, but we'll present that next month. Your next question was on the state grants, if we could break that out as a separate line item. I personally don't see an issue with that, but I'm happy to check with a few folks to make sure that, you know, that's an alignment. I understand the ask there. Yes,
I'm going to interrupt real quick right
Yep.
there. Sorry. We do need to continue to follow our fiscal policy, which is if we don't have cash in hand, it does not go into the budget. And there's a good reason for that. We cannot plan on money that we don't have, and I think that would be a mistake. Although you can add the line item, it may remain zero because until we have received grant funding and it's confirmed, there's no cash to spend. And it's wonderful that the state wants us to ask for that money, but until they have a proper way for us to receive the granting and go through the granting process, the CTIO and the CTEO and whatever agency that we need to go to, put the letters together, we don't have a way to even go after the money as an agency. No agency does at this point. So I do want to urge caution with that particular one because we have a fiscal policy in place that prevents the budget process from including those numbers on purpose until we have money in hand and we have received the awards of those funds. Thank you. You can continue.
Yes. And
I'm
go on.
Thank you, Chair Guzman. That was actually what I was going to say next, but I'll add one clarification. It's not when we receive the money, it's when the grant is awarded. So the fiscal policy states that we cannot include grants in here until they're awarded. So that's why it's not in here, but to break out a line, that's a possibility. I'm happy to review that. So thank you for bringing it up. Your next question was on the pass-through of Colfax BRT. And that's actually primarily in 2025. So the 280,187,000, that's 2025. So it's not actually included in the 5-year financial forecast substantially. So that's why it wouldn't make sense to break it out for the 5. But I did call it out here so you could see those amounts for 2025. And then your next question was on the financing proceeds. So we did show in July in the 5-year financial forecast presentation during the Finance and Planning Committee, the debt service increasing over time for financing proceeds. So we were showing that we were planning to issue more debt in order to fulfill these capital requirements. So for this presentation, I did add a separate line so you can see even more clearly the financing proceeds line, but it's tied very closely just a few down to that debt service line. So you can actually see that debt service does go up in future years. It does ebb and flow, but it goes up because of the issuance of more debt.
Okay, then if I could ask, with that debt that's being issued, the 500 million over the next 5 years that has not appeared in any finance document that I've seen. So I'm sorry if I've missed that. But I would very much like to be able to see what projects are in there. Because again, I've gone through the transit asset management plan that's in the current budget. I added everything up, and it doesn't come close to that 500 million. And there was no debt issued that was talked about that I have heard. So maybe there was a chart there that I missed, and I apologize for that. But something that large where we would be going to issue $500 million of debt, and I don't know how, I'm sure you have a plan as to how we would pay for that debt. But, you know, again, it's not in the current TAM. Because again, I just went through it and checked it all. And yes, there are some bus purchases in 2027. I saw that, but it doesn't come to the 283 million that you have here. So if I could get a list of those capital projects that you're thinking about bonding for or doing COPs, that would be great. Okay, so I have other questions, but let's get down to if I could talk about the FISA.
Sorry, Director Banker, we have 4 directors waiting to speak. Can I give them a turn and then come back?
Oh, absolutely. And then I can come back in and talk about FISA, because I am just absolutely stunned that money would be taken out of that particular reserve. But we'll wait until we get to the end of the discussion. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Director Geisinger, your hand was up next.
I think I'm last. Go ahead with others.
You're part of the committee. Go for it.
Okay.
There are 4 waiting, so we'll just keep moving.
I know that Director Binker was asking about the financing proceeds, the $500 million debt in the next 5 years, and requested a list of capital projects. There's some. Can you just answer that? Are these things that we have seen? That we have we seen a list, or what's there?
Yeah,
I'm okay getting a list later. I'm just curious, sort of what that's.
So as part of the financial planning process, the capital projects for this coming year and for the 2026 budget, they are scheduled to be discussed next month in the October Finance and Planning Committee meeting with the 2026 budget. So this is focused on the 5-year financial forecast, but diving into more details for the budget and the related capital will take place next month, and we will provide that information for you.
Okay. So they're projects that haven't been approved at this point.
No, because they're part of the 2026 budget, which has not been approved yet.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I look forward to that. The question about a line for the state grants, isn't our application for those grants, or at least for the CTE grant, going in another week or 2? I know we're not till award, but I think the award is coming in the next month or 2 as well. There was some discussion that we weren't at that point of knowing anything, but I think we do have a process underway. Is that right?
Madam CEO.
Yes, thank you very much. Deborah Johnson, General Manager, CEO, Director Geisinger, you are correct. We will be putting forward a letter relative to what our intent is with those monies. At this juncture, recognizing this is the inaugural year for the grant, we're not actually applying relative to what the guidelines would be going forward, but I am having a meeting with members of staff just on Thursday as we look at the various guidelines pursuant to what those monies could be used for, and having a discussion with the submittal taking place next week. But to the point that was raised earlier relative to the fiscal policy, that would yet to be awarded. So in adherence to that, the process is underway, but we have yet to submit. And that, I believe the deadline is September 11th.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious how we got to a 3% tariff projection. It seems like all the talk is much bigger tariffs. Can you answer that for me?
Yes, of course, because not all of our expenditures will be impacted by tariffs. It's only a subset of things like materials and supplies. And so we have to estimate based on a portion that would actually be impacted by tariffs. And so that's how we came up with that 3%, 1.2. It is an estimate, and so it could be higher or lower.
Okay. And we get a new sales and use tax forecast this month. Sounds like you've seen it. What do we do with that? Does that affect what this looks like? We will just pass this if we pass it tonight.
Yeah, so we will incorporate that into the 2026 budget. It will not be incorporated into this version of the 5-year financial forecast, but it would be considered for next year in the budget.
Okay. I've gone through a few questions. I have a couple on FISA as well. If you want me to come back on that and let others go, I'm happy to do that.
I would appreciate that. Director O'Keefe, you have been patiently waiting. The floor is yours.
No, that's okay. I'm happy to follow two people smarter than I am. I just wanted to echo the, $500 million in debt. We must know generally what's in that. So if we could just talk about it tonight rather than, I understand that we have this carefully laid out plan, but this is a big chunk of what we're being asked to consider tonight. And it would be good if we just had generally what it was, not holding anyone to it, but it would be good to know what that missing chunk is. On the state grants, I just want to caution us about the numbers that we put in for that. It is, as I understand it, it's a percent tax on oil and gas, which means it's variable both on price and on volume. And I am not nearly as optimistic as the governor's office is about the potential revenue from those sources. We have a bunch of counter macroeconomic things that are going on. We have a president that's trying to drive down the price of oil. We do not have good marginal pricing on our oil and gas, so we are not the first drop or the first molecule that comes out. There are plenty of cheaper sources. We also kind of have a state policy of transitioning out of oil and gas. So you have those two macro factors that I think are really going to put that money in a much it's going to be much smaller than people expect. And I'd take the under on anyone who wants to bet me on what the governor's forecast is for that revenue. So when we put it in, I'd like to see a little bit of risk weighting. Similarly, in the out years, I know we're not wildly dependent on federal funding, and I know that our answer is going to be, well, it's formulaic. Well, we've got a federal budget that is not sustainable. I don't know when the trees stop growing to the sky, but it's probably within this planning horizon where some very serious restructuring of the federal budget is going to occur. We are on the edge of a bigger issue at the federal level. So I'd like to see us, if possible, do some risk weighting on future years for that, because I think that is also at risk. I wanted to put in I saw merit pay timing as a potential source of money. I worked for a corporation. We did that too. It should be my plea is that is the last thing that we turn to. We also have a retention problem and a hiring problem, and people that are dealing with a highly inflation prone geography. So I'd really like us to almost kind of take that off the board and make some other tough decisions on financial things within our control. The only thing I see on the source of revenues that we do control is fare revenue. And I know this is a kind of chasing a tail around the table, but I would really like to see us drive fare compliance. I think that is the only thing that we can directly impact. We do have land sales and other things like that that are in our control, but that's something we can do every day. And I guess at some point I'd like to see an ROI on, if we put 5 new fare checkers on, we expect, the net impact to be X, whatever it is. I know it'll be a model, it'll be a guess, but that is something firmly within our control. So I'd like to put a pitch in for that. The other, it's probably a detailed question, but in our capital projects, have we ever considered using an owner-controlled insurance program to lower our insurance costs on these capital projects? Denver, this works depending on insurance rates for construction, which would put everyone to sleep. But it is something that owners can do if they have a significant pool of upcoming capital to take control of the insurance costs themselves and try to drive that down. And it's real money if it works with the risk market timing. So I don't think we use an OSIP. I think we could do a rolling owner controlled insurance program as a potential way to reduce costs on upcoming capital. And then one last thing, Mr. Chairman, on the FISA, I know this is going to come up on using that money for the maintenance of Flatiron Flyer. If I remember correctly, some of that bus service was offered as compensation for the lack of completion of the Northwest Corridor line. If that is true, then I think it is appropriate for FISA to cover that. If it's not true, then I'm kind of with the other directors that might have some concerns with it. But I seem to remember that was the bus service was added as compensation. And so that compensatory cost needs to be a FISA thing. We may not love it, that it's buses, not trains, but if it came there, I'm going to be a counter argument on it is an appropriate FISA expenditure in my mind, if that's true. I'll shut up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You snuck that one in on me. I was taking notes about your other questions. So, Ms. Vishwakarma, I saw your hand go up, but I am going to turn back to CFO Mackey to begin a response to those questions. And then when it comes to the OSIP, that's when your hand shot up. So I'm assuming that's what you were ready to speak about. So you can take a turn at answering that question. But
probably 2 people on the call that care about that. It's or me.
Thank you, Chair Guzman. So actually, Melanie Snyder has kindly offered to speak to that, but I'll touch on a couple of things first. So yes, we are happy to show some math behind the estimated ROI of doing fare checks. So I can take that as a follow-up. I think I'm happy to do that. In terms of what is in the capital requirements, it's things like more buses, rail, state of good repair, facilities needs. A lot of our buildings are 30 plus years old. It's things like that. Todd Nickel is actually on a flight. He was not able to join. I would prefer, if you're okay with it, to send you a follow-up very soon. I don't think you will see any surprises in it, frankly, but I can give you a listing of what is in there. I'd be happy to do that. And I'll turn it over to, if it's all right, Chair Guzman, Melanie Snyder to answer the question on the OSIP.
Yes, please proceed, Ms. Schneider. Thank you, General Counsel.
Yes, thank you. And I think it sounded like perhaps Jyotsna Vishwakarma wanted to weigh in. I'll just give the short answer that yes, the agency has historically utilized the owner-controlled insurance program. It is something that we continuously assess, and we can send you some information about the historical use and some of the factors we consider separately is what I'd suggest.
Thank you. I also wanted, Mr. Chair, if I can offer a compliment to our relatively new CFO for her ability to learn public sector financing quicker than anybody else I've ever seen on the planet. So
She also went to the legislature and represented RTD very well with Mr. Michael Davies, our government relations specialist, in front of the TLRC this week. And I could not hear the conversation, but I was reading the transcript as the presentation was done. And so kudos to you, because that's always nerve-wracking even for me. And I'm very comfortable under the dome as a Colorado citizen. So to go and be put in front of a board of legislators is always a bit nerve-wracking for me. And you did really well. So thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Director Larson, you are next.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I think Patrick sort of mentioned it, I guess, understand a little bit better the hiring slowdown. You know, I know with sort of the struggle we've had hiring operators, I saw that, and I think I shared some of the same concern that Patrick had. And I just kind of wondered, you know, yeah, is that going to be sort of the kind of the operator force, or was that other people sort of inside the, I guess, administration, or just wanted to understand that better and hope that we don't have to hire or slow down the hiring of anybody who could improve our reliability and so forth. That's it.
Madam CEO.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Larson, for the question. As I have shared with members of the team, quite naturally, our core business is service delivery. In order to do that, the first thing you need is a schedule, then vehicles, and then people. What we have talked about more or less is a hiring chill. Any position that is geared toward service delivery, regulatory compliance, safety will have a priority. I'm speaking somewhat out of school. I have a meeting with the leadership team tomorrow, whereby we're going to look at positions, for instance, that have been vacant for a certain period of time and capitalize on those efficiencies going forward. So that's what we mean in reference to what you saw outlined going forward. Speaking from a place of past experience, when I came into the organization where the budget had just been approved a couple of days before I joined, and we were in a situation where we received federal funding to aid with our path forward of service delivery, it's quite difficult when you're looking at frontline service workers and doing a recall of those positions just by virtue of certification and things of the like. So we know we would be placing ourselves at a disadvantage, but keeping in mind, I want to manage expectations. We're going to look at operational efficiencies because we know our core business is service delivery. So there'll be more information forthcoming, but wanted to be forthright relative to some of the belt tightening concepts that we have considered as a leadership team moving forward. So thank you very much for that question.
Thank you. Director Nicholson, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Chair Guzman. So I have two questions. The first is, it's my understanding that this was not, the $500 million in new borrowing was not included in last year's 5-year financial forecast. Why is that? And then I have one follow-up.
I would have to, if I may,
Yep.
Chair, I would have to go back and look specifically at the forecast to answer yes or no to that. As I am still 4 months into my job, I'm not as familiar with what was done last year. However, I can say that in reviewing the 5-year financial forecast with my team, we have fewer reserves available based on the budget that was adopted for 2025, which was substantially different than the 5-year financial forecast that was adopted this time last year, right? So the budget ended up having a higher level of expenditures and reduced our reserves. So that would be part of it, as well as I know the team is working diligently to ensure that we are representing a complete view of the inventory of assets at RTD, which therefore, as you're adding inventory, it would increase the future capital requirements. And so some of that would have been from adding things like looking out to facilities needs, where a facility is 30 or 40 years old and really will need some capital replacement work done in the near future. So it would be probably a blend of those things.
That, Mr. Guzman? Sorry,
Yes.
Chair Guzman, my apologies.
Yes, Director Nicholson, please.
Thank you. So that actually leads well into my second question, which is, it seems backward to me to approve $500 million in new borrowing, which will come with a substantial yearly cost to this agency, without first reviewing and approving the capital projects in some form that underlie that. And the reason that I say that is that, you know, the board previous to us last year approved a fleet transition plan. And I am deeply uncomfortable with the idea of us buying new buses without having made meaningful progress on building the infrastructure to transition to hybrid and really to electric. And so for me, you know, there are agencies that run their buses for 15, 20, 25, 30 years because they're able to do so. And I just really, I would be deeply uncomfortable approving this 5-year financial forecast without an understanding of exactly what types of assets and how much we're going to spend on diesel buses, hybrid buses, you know, facilities, electric transition, you know, how much of this is going toward our fleet transition plan fundamentally, and how much of it is going toward maintaining our current path toward oil and gas would be really, really helpful for me to know before I could vote yes on this.
General Manager, CEO, your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd be remiss if I didn't add some clarifying comments relative to the comments that Secretary Nicholson said. Recognizing that the Federal Transit Administration puts forward guidelines in reference to operating bus fleets for the use of public transportation services. It's generally 12 years or 500,000 miles, whichever comes first. I would find it hard to believe that a public transit agency in the United States is running 30-year-old buses. More to the point, there is a fleet replacement plan to which we must adhere as being recipients of federal dollars. And keeping in mind, as we look at the useful life, there is a fleet replacement cycle in which we adhere as we go forward with our facilities and fleet transition plan. And as we look at our spare ratio and in conjunction with the Federal Transit Administration relative to us having additional buses that we did not utilize due to the fact we couldn't pull out for service with the service reduction, we have obligations to which we must meet. And so we are being prudent as it relates to the path forward. Quite naturally, with the facilities and fleet transition plan, we will look at various buses relative to the propulsion system. But as we talk about clean diesel hybrid buses, we do have the facilities in which to accommodate those. If we talk about anything else that does not have a combustible engine, we quite naturally would not be procuring those. Hence, that's why we canceled the last battery electric bus purchase with the support of this board a couple of years ago. So I just wanted to state that for the record. Thank you.
Right. Chief Financial Officer Mackey, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Director Nicholson, for the question. I'll point out slide 3 in the presentation that I discussed, the background slide. So the third bullet point states that this 5-year financial forecast is the basis for RTD's budget preparation. It's not an appropriation. By approving this forecast, you are not approving debt issuance in any respect. And what we will do is show you in the month of October what the budget for 2026 is, including expected debt issuance of perhaps $20 million as shown for 2026. And then that would be approved in November. So this is simply a basis for us to develop the budget, which we will discuss next month in October.
Director Nicholson, one follow-up, and then I'm going back to Director Binker, please.
I would just say that, you know, having been on the board for 8 months now, one thing I've learned is how important path dependence is in making decisions here, and how much the early choices like this 5-year financial forecast influence the things that we do later on and eat up and dominate those decisions. So while I respectfully understand where you're coming from, I think once we approve this, we are probably in many ways locking ourselves in to those later decisions. So that's why I would say it might seem like it's an early thing, but in practice, with the way this board has functioned over the last few years, I think that in many ways we're making the decision right now.
I am going to step in and challenge that That is not how the board has functioned the last few years. We work through this process as we have. And in fact, the five-year financial forecast took the place of the mid-year budget changes so that we had a solid plan going forward to be able to work forward with our budgets on an annual basis. And so I think that you are speaking a little bit out of turn, and I would exercise caution as we go forward. I understand your concerns. More is coming in this very meeting, and we have another separate meeting in this committee to deal with more issues as a committee on this. So please refrain from disparaging the board or the work that we are doing here, Director Nicholson, because we are fiduciaries and a duty of loyalty is required in this situation. It's okay to ask questions. It is not okay to point fingers, and you are a member of the body. So you will have a final vote. I'm allowing you to speak as a non-member of the committee because I believe that we all get to have a voice here, but respect and decorum is still demanded in this committee, and I will enforce that rule. Vice Chair Banker, I am returning to you as promised. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. To sort of follow up on what Director Nicholson was saying, and to actually point fingers on past boards, just to remind everybody, past boards did pass the FISA fund, and the intent was for unfinished fast tracks projects. And that is why it was established a number of years ago. And to go back for a little bit of history, I'm thinking I might be the only one that was involved in the 2004 fast track selection. If that is incorrect, please let me know. But I was there, and it was promised that the money raised by the sales tax that we asked for the voters to approve was to build fast tracks. And so when I saw that money now is being taken out of FISA reserve, you can now come up with all kinds of reasons why you can keep raiding that fund if we go forward with this. The money for the two projects that have been mentioned to us, Flatiron Flyer and I think something on the W line, those expenses should then become, and I would actually debate that point too, but those expenses should be coming out of the 0.4 fast tracks tax, not the FISA fund. They're separate, they're different. And I'm guessing that when past boards appropriated the $190 million, I would wager a guess that it came from operating base budget. And in addition, with the fast tracks rules and the way it was passed was base budget money could flow into fast tracks projects. However, it's prohibited for fast tracks project money to go into base budget operating or capital. And that, if you want documentation, I still have the 2014 NAM study where all of that is explained. So I would request that you reconsider taking those dollars out of FISA, because as it stands right now, when we go for a vote, Mr. Chairman, I am a no vote. I think this 5-year plan has a lot of issues. FISA's one, there's others, but I could not support money being taken out of FISA. So with that, there's my speech. I'll send you more questions sometime tomorrow. And I also want to tell you, Ms. Mackey, I very much appreciate your work. I know you are very sharp, and I thoroughly enjoy talking with you because at least we speak the same language. And I know you are doing an outstanding job. So please, with all my comments and issues that I have tonight, it's just budgets cause this, and I'm so glad the board is becoming so active in budget decisions because that's how you run the agency. This is really the only document that the board or any governing body will pass where it sets the rules for the next fiscal year, for the next 12 months. A board can pass whatever else they want, but if there's no money for it in the budget, then it just doesn't happen. So CFO Mackey, please understand how, I think at this point, how passionate I am about budgeting. So forgive me if I, in any way, insinuated that, you didn't have the information. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Baker. I appreciate the way that you approached that conversation a whole lot. I am going to skip forward to Director Catlin because she has not spoken at this meeting yet. So Director Catlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't think Director Banker would be at all surprised that I would probably respectfully disagree with her on the FISA situation. I think that for the record, FISA is different than Fast Track's vote in 2004. The vote of the people was clear for Fast Tracks, but Fast Tracks also included enhanced bus service to support those corridors. And people often forget that. And the FISA account was established by the board almost a decade later to try and backfill some of the shortfall that we experienced due to the recession in 2008. And I believe that the FISA is not untouchable and that it is up to this board's discretion to utilize those funds as needed. And I would support using the FISA for the Flatiron Flyer, given the spirit of the enhanced bus service component of the Fast Tracks plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I am looking for the email and who it was sent from. So board directors, you should have an email from our general manager, CEO Deborah Johnson, on Wednesday, 9/3/2025, sent out at 6:42 p.m. that address the question about the expenditures for the Flatiron Flyer and the 2004 ballot text, which indicates, and I'm going to read it with the quotes, quote, "With all proceeds of debt and taxes to be used and spent for the construction and operation of a fixed guideway mass transit system, comma, the construction of additional park and ride lots, comma, the expansion and improvement of existing park and ride lots, comma, and increased bus service, comma, including the use of smaller buses and vans and alternative fuel vehicles as appropriate." All of us in this committee are old enough to have voted on that amendment if you were here in Colorado at the time. And so the language does include payment for that. And the money is put into the FISA account because the 0.04% sales tax cannot pay for base operations. That being said, I believe the answer has already been sent out to the board members directly in a proper response, and I would really urge you to go back and look at that. The 2004 ballot text is also linked in that email for your consideration. The use of the FISA account includes the use of the 0.04% sales tax to be used for the appropriated purposes that the people allowed the collection of the tax to occur. And so it's our job to be responsible for the use of those funds. I'm also going to just put this out there for everybody. In pre-planning this meeting, I did go to our CFO and we had a discussion about what do we bring forward. So rather than attacking each other, what I said was, bring everything forward. Let's talk about things that we don't want to talk about. A reduction in force, a reduction in service. Both of those are the same thing. A reduction in benefits payments, a reduction to some of the funds that we have to be able to cover the costs and leverage what we do have available to us to be able to go forward, because I do believe that we as a committee and a board are smart enough to figure this out with our amazing staff. And so nothing's off the table because we're just having a conversation at this point about how we go forward. And I think that the considerations and concerns that you're bringing up tonight are really key to how we proceed, and I understand that. But let's lower the temperature and realize we are looking at a finite resource, which is money, and we have to do a job that is expansively more expensive for different reasons, and we can work together to figure it out. And I just want to remember that we are basing ourselves in the work that we're supposed to be doing, which is serving the public, and everybody's here to do that. So sometimes it feels like there's an attack and nobody's raiding anything and nobody's going after anything that's too prized of a possession for us to not be able to look at, but really you know, we do have to make difficult decisions, and we are the last agency standing in the state that hasn't had to you know, cry to the public about not having the resources that we need. But if we are not careful on how we proceed, we may end up there, and we are not in a great position to do that right now. So let's work through this in a logical manner and look at all of the options and determine what the best is to do based on what the advice is that we are given, what our plans are going forward. I think all of it's important, and I know we can do this. I believe in us, and I believe in our agency, and I think that's the right approach to take. Chair Bouquet, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Thank you for recognizing me, Committee Chair Guzman. Words well said. I appreciate you saying that, because based on the conversations, you know, I've had with directors and with staff, you know, it is the hard conversations that are had, and I do appreciate, you know, concerns being brought up by directors in regards to touching, you know, the FISA. It is this body's ultimate, you know, authority to do so, and the analogy that was, you know, brought up to me and I think is appropriate is, at the end of the day, if this is our house and there's a major storm that hits our house in regards to, you know, in our sense, a financial storm in this situation, we might need to allocate some of that money we're saving for the new pool to go and fix up our house. So I personally think that we're going to be throughout the country, going to be in kind of some rough financial times in the next coming years. And I think at the end of the day, that protecting our core business, our core riders, those are transit dependent, protecting our employees, you know, that is something that I think this board should get behind in regards to, you know, going in, using some funds from that FISA account. In this, I'm only one individual voice, but from my understanding and my conversations, I greatly appreciate the concerns that are brought up. But at the end of the day, I would encourage this board, we got to protect our necessities that we have as an agency, even if that means making tough decisions. So appreciate the recognition. Thank you for letting me make my comments.
Thank you. Director Geisinger, I promised I'd come back to you, so it's your turn.
Thank you, Chair Guzman. You know, I agree with what you say, that there's nothing that's too prized that we shouldn't look at it. And I think that both of these issues that we're talking about go to that issue, you know, $500 million, where we're not really looking at the list of what's happening. I agree with Director Nicholson in the sense, not what's happened in the past or anything, but in the sense that we are setting a path forward. 3 years from now, there will be different people on this board, and they may be saying, oh, well, you know, we've had this 5-year plan for several years. The board must have been fine with it. So I think it is important for us to look at FISA, you know, what's happening there, and the 500 million, and make a decision. And I'm sort of wavering on what to do here. I want to hear what the effect of no votes is tonight, are tonight. But on FISA, there are two pieces that what we're seeing is money coming out, and the reason for the expenses. Is there also a decision that the money that the board has said should go in will not be going into the future? There's no, in other words, does this not have a continuing revenue stream, which I believe, I haven't gone back to look at the board's direction, but my understanding is the board has directed a certain amount to go in every year. Is that correct? And is that going away here?
Madam CFO.
Yes, for example, in the fiscal policy, it does say that sale of property and lease from property would fund the FISA. So we did not make any changes to the fiscal policy in terms of what would be funding the FISA.
I think there's other money besides those two, isn't there?
Let me
I think those are sort of sidelights. I'm not sure about that. But to the extent we're not putting money in, you know, I think we need to go back to the board's directive and see if what we're doing here requires the board to take some action. You know, I recognize there's views all over the board, all over our group on this, but I'd just like to know, you know, what was the directive for what's going into the board, into the FISA, and are we changing that here? So I have that concern. I have concern with the 500 million. I guess I'd like to know what happens if we don't move this forward tonight.
Madam CFO.
So we do have a discussion item coming up on the fiscal policy. We will review that. Looking at some of the language down here. There's, for example, excess fast track sales and use tax contributions as determined by the board. So it does allow for some board appropriation of funds. But again, we'll be discussing the fiscal policy shortly coming up. So that would be a separate conversation.
Would it be helpful to members of the committee and the board if we pull the fast tracks resolution and have that sent out to everybody through the board office? That way we can see what that language says, review it, and understand it better. Also, we do have, and it's probably been sent several times at this point because I can imagine that the board office didn't want to hear that, but we'll send it again because that is the right thing to do for everybody, and put it at the top of your email boxes to read this week so we can all understand it. There's also, you know, like, what is it that we need to move forward on this? I'm going to ask that question to the committee members, so I'd love to hear your answers. And I would like to hear them now so that I can take note of it. Let's put that part to the side. You will get the FISA policy sent to you promptly after this meeting. What else do you need?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Yes, I was just going to add some additional comments relative to CFO Mackey's. So recognizing she did indicate that there is a discussion item that's on the agenda this evening. If you look at package page 62 under fund balances, item number 4, it talks about the 4 elements that would go to fund the FISA. And I just wanted to ensure that everybody is aware of that relative to the conversation that has ensued. Thank you.
Yep. Having read the packet several times by now before we get to the meeting, I know that that is there and that's a part of the conversation we're going to have, but I'm asking you all, unmute yourselves and tell me what it is you need so I can make sure that we get it to you right now. Because I think we need to be on the same playing field with the same rules and the same understanding with each other to be able to proceed in this moment. So I'll call you by name. Director Banker, what do you need from us to be able to proceed forward with the conversation around this?
First of all, as you know, FISA is my #1, but the others include the $500 million of borrowing that to me was quite the surprise, trying to figure out why is it borrowing? Why has it doubled over what we've seen in the 2025 budget?
Okay.
I also have a number of questions, which we haven't even gotten into, about the revenue assumptions that are used, the fare box, sales and use tax assumptions, grants, investment income strikes me as low. I mean, I'll go ahead and send my questions, but all of those revenue sources, I have questions about, because again, especially sales and use tax strikes me as exceedingly low, and it's lower than what I'm seeing the state come up with. So I just have more questions about that. So unless I understand the rationale for that number, I would still be voting no on that.
With respect to policy or anything related to our board fiscal policies, our reserves, or our accounts, is there anything that you need to have in front of you to review so we understand what is going where currently based on our directive to the agency?
There's another question that I did ask and I didn't feel like I got the answer I needed. Who and how decides how much of the money goes into operating and how much money goes into capital? I'd like to know how that is done.
CFO Mackey. You're on mute. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. RTD follows generally accepted accounting principles and the Government Accounting Standards Board requirements, as well as guidance from our internal and external auditors. And so operating expenses, typically things like wages.
Right.
What goes into capital expenditures is that which extends the useful life of an asset and is significant. If it's something that's $5,000 and under, you will typically see it in expense projects. And so it's not us deciding, it's based on accounting policies.
Well, okay, if I could ask, I understand GAAP, I understand all of that. somebody still has to make a decision. Okay, $1 billion of sales and other revenues come in. Certain amount goes to operating and service improvements and wages. I understand that. But somebody then says, oh, we want this amount to go over to capital. That is discretionary. Your base budget, there's some discretionary decisions in there, but as you know, it's mostly salary. Somehow a decision is made to separate the two into two separate budgets. I want to know how that's done. Thank you.
May I, Chair Guzman?
Yes.
Yes, so I'll just reiterate what we communicated earlier when this question was sent, and we sent the response over, but I can elaborate too if that's helpful. So we did say that staff is developing the 2026 budget currently and closely monitoring expense. And as RTD is favorable to the 2025 budget through June, staff recommends not creating a revised budget for the 3-month period of October through December. That was part of the question. But then going on, we explained that the revenue, basically the operating expense comes out first and debt payments come out first. And, you know, based on the 5-year financial forecast, there's not enough funds left over in order to fund the capital requirements. So we do need to first, with revenue, pay for the operating expense. That is primary.
Does that satisfy your question, Vice Chair Banker?
Just satisfy my question. Actually, I apologize, but no, because I've been through budget decisions. So one question, for example, would be when you're putting together the budget, you're probably getting pretty close to making some final decisions. How much money are you setting aside for additional new service in 2026? Does that come before buying another 50 buses? You know, those are the questions I'm asking. Because again, you know, the board did have a retreat. We all came together. We all said, you know, increased ridership is the most important thing to us. I understand capital budgets are fungible. They are different. It is not operating. You can have a capital plan, a capital budget where, you know, it's either 5-year or 10-year or whatever, you know, time period you want to choose. And then you slice it up into pieces, and you don't try to put, you know, a huge chunk in there. All of a sudden, you space it. You know, you put together the plan, and so it goes back to, you know, the $500 million that we were talking about. But again, because you and your executive team have got tremendous amount of power to decide how much is going to be going into service and service increases versus how many more buses we're going to buy next year. And isn't that basically, you know, one of the biggest trade-offs? So that's my question, is basically, how do you make that decision between, you know, service and increasing our riders and getting more routes out there and doing what the board has been talking about now for a while versus, well, can a bus go a little bit longer? 13 years since we were in COVID time, and a lot of those buses weren't hitting the street. You know, maybe they've got a longer life. I don't know. But those are decisions that budget types make routinely. And if you're asking for rules or procedures, if you have any procedures regarding that, that's what I'd like to see. So if you've got that, that'd be helpful for me. Thank you.
Madam CFO.
Yes, so in the fiscal policy that's board adopted for RTD, it does state that it is against our policy to fund operating expense with debt. So that is the reason why you do fund operating expense first with revenue. So we're following the fiscal policy by making this choice. In terms of coming to the amount of $840 million for operating expense, it's actually a relatively simple calculation. Right, we're given the sales and use tax forecast by CU Leads, and the rest of the revenue is based on a conservative forecast. And then we have the minimum net revenue coverage of 1.2 that we have to achieve. and we know what our debt service is. So if you do the math, it's a plug to get to 840 million operating expense based on our limitations and revenue, net revenue coverage, and what our debt payments are for 2025. It is very easy to get to that number. And so we don't know yet what we're going to do for service and labor fully. We need to meet this target. So when we present the budget to you next month as a discussion item, then we will show any impacts, if there are any, to labor and service.
Thank you. Sorry, Director Geisinger, your hand went down. Did you have something else to comment on?
I might go ahead with the others.
All right. Director O'Keefe, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to circle back on and this hopefully isn't kicking a dead horse a couple more times, but there are a couple things, and this is just fact, that Fast Track's promise of capital build out was underfunded. It was underfunded from the beginning. And this is not a surprise to anyone right now, but it is a gift that has been given to us. And I think when we get the Fast Track's report that I wish was in our hands now, but when it comes in a few months, we're going to see a number that is, doesn't reconcile with the revenue sources. So we're going to start making some tough choices on how that disappointment gets spread around. And I will expect that any expenditure on new service under Fast Tracks, including my district, which is last in line, carries an operations and maintenance projection specific, and not a pie in the sky, we'll sort it out later, kind of thing. That we have carried this operations and maintenance, because I will commend this management team for digging us out of the hole of the second gift that was given to us, and that was a underfunded asset management plan that we cannot amplify that problem going forward. And so if we're not carrying operations and maintenance because of some wording in Fast Tracks, then I will expect to see a line item that carries it right next to it, so we know when we make a decision that we're carrying those costs going forward, and it's clear and transparent for our constituencies that see it too. Because right now we're coming out of opacity into clarity, and that's great. I mean, this is like a long time coming, and I just don't want to double down on that challenge again. So if we aren't grouping operations and maintenance within the FISA account, it should be appended to the bottom of it and never move, so we understand what these impacts are going forward. And so that's something that I think we'll have to work on. And I'm not picking on joint service; it is everything, but joint service is next. And if GM CEO Johnson and I have talked multiple times about that price has to come back with operations and maintenance projections, so we don't have this problem going forward, because it's this hidden massive cost that then starts knocking everything out down the road. So that's my plea on the long-term projections once we start incorporating the Fast Track's capital revisions, or whatever we're calling this new report that's coming out. So it sounds like a lot of critique. It's actually a lot of appreciation for the work that's been done to dig us out of the lack of clarity on our costs. I don't want to replicate that going forward. So I want us to carry robust contingency loaded operations and maintenance assumptions that go with robust contingency loaded capital decisions going forward. So I think both those problems are what's punching us in the face right now as a collective body. Thanks.
Madam CEO.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just if I may, I just wanted to ensure that everybody was aware I did disseminate a communique August 27th that indicated when you will have the opportunity to see the draft of the unfinished Fast Tracks report. There will be a presentation at the board meeting on September 30th. giving you an opportunity to provide feedback relative to what it is that we need to submit to the state legislature and to the governor's office. So it won't be a couple of months. You will be getting a draft in a matter of weeks. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Time check at 7:16. We do need to stop for a break by 7:30. Director Nicholson, you want to help us land this plane so we can get to a vote and find out what we're doing? Oh, Director Geisinger, I will call on you before we do that. Director Nicholson, let's go.
Thank you.
Unmute.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I couldn't tell if you were going to me or going to her. So one of the major long-term expenses that any entity today can face is technical infrastructure. Major technical upgrades to our network, to our security, to our fare payments can be millions and millions of dollars. And I'm wondering if you can speak to what degree in this 5-year financial forecast have you guys looked at the questions? Have you spoken with our CITO about what types of technical infrastructure are going to be needed over the next 5 years, and ballparking how much some of the more expensive infrastructure improvements are going to cost, and whether that's baked into this?
Madam CFO.
Yes, so this is a bit higher level. It doesn't go into what's included and not included. As I mentioned, it doesn't have appropriation of funds for specific projects. But as we're looking at the long range financial plan for 30 years, I would say we're looking at different scenarios for putting in more technical, better infrastructure. So we're considering that there and what the implications could be. But this view really kind of shows us more so what our limitations in operating expense are based on revenue, as well as for capital requirements, what are the base requirements without expansion, without factoring in a lot of investment in new technology that's not included in here. That would be addressed separately apart from this discussion.
One more, and then I need to move on to Director Geisinger.
Yeah, I promise. Last question. I noticed that a lot of the decrease in the unrestricted funds go to the capital replacement reserves. And I was wondering how much of that is intending to be spent on the fleet transition plan, because I know we have a fleet transition plan, but I don't understand how that's being funded. So I was wondering if there's what the tie is between those funds and the fleet transition plan.
Madam CFO.
Yes, so I wouldn't take this as implying that unrestricted funds are feeding capital replacement reserve. It's not exactly the math of what's happening, but I see what you're saying. Overall, one is declining, one is growing, right? So this does not incorporate fleet transition to diesel hybrid and battery, but again, we are exploring what that would look like as part of the 30-year long-range financial plan that we will present to you. I believe it's in November.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Director Geisinger.
Thank you. And I join others, Ms. Mackey, and thank you for all of this really good work, especially coming on just recently. I totally agree with and always have with Director O'Keefe that maintenance and operations, certainly need to be a part of this. I don't really have that big a problem with using. I don't have a big problem with using the fast tracks for some of that. Where my concern is these things do start leading down a road, and this board has not, looked at what money should be going into FISA or what that $500 million debt is looking at. So I would say, making sure that these decisions are made by the board. And honestly, as Ms. Johnson knows very well, we've got this JSOC committee that's pushing for new rail, joint service, and I think they need to understand that these are not board decisions that are going forward. These are recommendations, but I also think the board needs to be fully apprised and making these decisions. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Given what I have heard, I am going to call a roll vote. So please unmute yourselves and be ready to vote. Vice Chair Banker,
No.
Director Catlin,
Yes.
Director Geisinger.
No,
I'm sorry, was that a no?
that was a no.
Thank you. Director Guchenritter,
Yes.
Director Larson,
Yes.
Director O'Keefe,
Yes, at this stage.
I am Chair Guzman. I will be voting yes on this. It will pass. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yes, 2 no, and we will move that to the board for further consideration. Thank you for an intense and very welcome conversation around this. I do appreciate all of us taking our time with this particular one. It is 7:21. I am going to call for a 12-minute recess, please. It sounds a little odd, but 12 minutes. That way we give our transcriptionists a break. That was a lot to type, and we can come back and finish the rest of our meeting. I will adjourn the meeting right now at 7:22, and we will return by 7:34. Thank you. All right, it is 7:34. Let's get back to business. We are returning to the Finance and Planning meeting, September 9th of 2025. We are beginning the second half of our meeting at 7:34 p.m. We are at item D of our agenda, which is discussion items. Quickly, before we go there, I just want to thank everybody for well-informed and positive conversation. We often have to deal with difficult matters, and we do that best when we're working together. And so I just want to make sure that I say thank you to staff who are recording and putting these meetings together. All of the preparation that goes into creating these meetings. It's a whole lot of work to get here and do this. And so with respect to my fellow directors, I know I can speak for all of us when I say thank you for the tremendous effort that you go through to be able to let us have these moments where we engage in tough conversation and move forward with items. The first item under our discussion is the 2026 fiscal policy. So I would like to ask Kelly Mackey, our Chief Financial Officer, and Brendan Morgan, our Senior Manager of Debt and Investments, to present this item. Madam CFO.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, just to clarify, fiscal policy or the investment policy?
I have the 2026 fiscal policy up right now, but if we need to reverse that, we can.
Yep, that's all right. The 2026 fiscal policy is a discussion item that we will bring back to the Finance and Planning Committee on October 14 and ask for approval. This policy can be changed at any time. The fiscal policy establishes the financial control framework and governance of the agency's financial resources for that year. The 2026 budget and the 5-year financial forecast should align to the 2026 fiscal policy as budgetary appropriations are developed in alignment with the fiscal policy. The redlined version shows the changes from the prior fiscal policy for 2025 that was approved by the board on April 29th of this year versus what we're asking to be approved for 2026. In addition to minor grammatical and punctuation changes, we have proposed one change, changing will to may in RTD will limit expenditure and expense fiscal carry forwards to the lesser of the life of the project or 3 years. The reason for this, a recommended modification, is that in practice, in limited circumstances, program modification opportunities or requirements may result in the extension of a project for the benefit of RTD, such as the ticket vending machines capital projects that was originally approved in 2020 and then expanded in 2024. This type of extension should be a very limited occurrence. And at this point, for example, I do not recommend pulling back the funds for the ticket vending machines replacement as staff is nearing procurement later this year. And there are no other suggested changes to the fiscal policy at this time. And Chair Guzman, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you. Directors, is there any discussion or question about this matter? This is the discussion item, so we want to make sure we have the discussion here and we can fix anything before it comes back for recommended action. I see Director Nicholson hand is up. Please proceed, Director Nicholson.
Thank you. So is this, to understand, CFO Mackey, is this something where you could come to the board and get approval to take it beyond 3 years, or is this something where this change essentially allows staff to do this without asking for board approval? Because right now it's obviously it says will. Could you do this on a piecemeal basis rather than changing the fiscal policy? Does that make sense?
Madam CFO.
Yep. Happy for GM CEO Johnson to weigh in as well as council on this, but I believe, yes, I would, if we were to deviate from the existing policy, I could come to the board and propose, for example, that I extend the ticket vending machines project for more years rather than pull the money back. Yes.
Vice Chair Banker.
Yes, this has to, again, going back to capital budgets. There is a very large amount of money that keeps, getting carried forward year to year because the projects have been appropriated, but the projects haven't been completed. Do you have a list of those projects? Do you know where we are? I don't know how many years you go back. Is it to 2021? If you do have a list of those projects with how much money was originally appropriated and how much money still needs to be spent for that project, I would love to get a copy of that.
CFO Mackey.
Yes, the information is available, but I would turn your attention to the agenda packet. The last topic that we will discuss this evening is actually capital projects, and you can see there are 2 pages of a list of them and when they were approved in terms of the year. And so I believe, off the top of my head, we can double check. I believe ticket vending machines really is the only one, but we can look when we get to that topic just to double check, but it's few and far between.
Okay, my understanding is the capital carry forward is, trying to remember, 300 million? Am I correct? I mean, for example, we just approved 125 million for reconstruction of rail downtown. Okay, granted, it was appropriated this year, but that's an example. So clearly it's not going to be paid out completely in 2025. You're going to carry forward the remaining cost because the project's going to take, at least another year. Am I explaining myself well? Maybe not.
Madam CFO.
Yes, so the current deferred balance for 2025 capital needs, the 2025 deferred is 340 million. So this is basically, though, a different ask. This is not to extend these beyond 3 years, but I do hear what you're saying.
Yes, so again, I don't know what previous boards have approved in terms of projects. They've appropriated monies, and I would like to know how many of those are unfinished projects and how much money is remaining in each project.
We are getting to that tonight in the last item under discussion to begin that conversation.
But if you've got a list, I'd love to see it.
Scroll down further in the agenda packet for tonight and it will be there.
No, and I understand, but while we're talking about having certain time limits on project, I do see the relationship there.
Yeah, absolutely valid. Director Nicholson, I apologize if there was a follow-up. You lowered your hand, so I moved on to the next director. Please proceed.
It's okay. I wanted to include others. CFO Mackey. So I guess my question would be, if our goal is to keep the framework at the fiscal policy at 3 years and to do this only when absolutely necessary and only in very, as I think you said, rare occasions, then shouldn't we keep the fiscal policy as is and just have you come to the board on the very, very rare occasion when we need to deviate from it? It just strikes me, if this is going to be a really rare occurrence, that it's better to keep our policy the way we want it and have, an agenda item once a year that, deviates from it.
Madam CFO.
Yes, I think some of these would be such small dollar amounts, it wouldn't make sense to bring some of these to the board and spend your time on it. And I think in practice, RTD and the board have not followed the existing fiscal policy because they, in some limited circumstances have not been following this 3-year rule. And so we're trying to update the fiscal policy to the actual practice, which is conservative, but we want to make sure that we're in compliance with the policy.
Yes, go ahead, Director Nicholson.
So my ask would be to say that you either informally or you put it in the fiscal policy that if you're going to go over 3 years on a project, that you notify the board, the chair, somebody on the board of the fact that, hey, we've gone past 3 years and we're still applying it. We're doing this. Here's some notice to let you know. Maybe that could go in the fiscal policy, or it could be just a standing thing that you do to make us feel comfortable.
Yes, I would be fine with that, to include that in either quarterly materials or monthly materials.
Awesome sauce.
Thank you. Director Guchenritter.
Thank you. Yeah, I realized when I was reviewing this, I didn't know what our safety management system was that we talk about will be maintained to minimize exposure. So I was just curious what that tool is.
Madam CEO?
So when you're talking about our SMS, is
Yes.
in reference to where we're going, I don't know the name of the system off the top of my head, but we use a mechanism where we capture the information that we use for risk management purposes. And so I can double back with specifics relative to the program, if that's the software, if that's what you're interested in, Director Guchenritter.
Thank you. Yes, I realize it's a pretty specific question, but it just caught my eye, and I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. I will send a communique to the entire body so you all receive the same information in the spirit of transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, Director Guchenritter?
No, that's all for me. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands raised. I am going to opine packet page 67, which shows the red line. I'm not frankly comfortable with the language may. I think there's a better way to write this. I believe it's probably wiser use of board time to have to deal with some of these projects that go beyond 3 years, even if they're small amounts. It could be a presentation of a SIP book, which has been requested by several directors over the last few years, a continuation of our capital improvement project discussion that we're going to begin tonight. But I am not inclined to change that word from will to may. It was my understanding and probably just a miscommunication that that language was going to be changed from will to shall. And this gives away some oversight authority in terms of budget and management of our fiscal responsibility as a board. And I don't know that I feel comfortable moving this forward with the language as it is. I am inclined with Director Nicholson to believe that there may be another way to write this language that will respect our conservative fiscal responsibility, but also give the agency the opportunity to come before the board on these matters. And I do understand very clearly with respect to the ticket vending machine that it has taken much longer than 3 years to be able to do that. But in conversation with a few other directors around this particular language, there was some resistance to it. And so I want to vocalize that on their behalf and also on mine, and just say that I think we need to consider the language here very carefully. So for what it's worth, I don't like that change, and I would actually ask to change it back and then maybe add a comma or semicolon or something else to the rest of it to say any capital expenditures, we can set a threshold amount if we need to, that are going to go beyond 3 years, need to come before the board for discussion as we do this budgeting process. I'll end there. General Manager, CEO, your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very kindly. So in reference to the question that was just posed by Director Guchenritter, I want to clarify my comments as I looked at the board packet, whereby he was referencing on package page 67 under expenditure policies, item number 5, a safety management system will be maintained to minimize exposure to liability claims. There's a clear-cut nexus with the corresponding Public Transportation Agency safety plan that will be presented tomorrow in the Operations Safety and Security Committee meeting. As a point of clarification relative to the Public Transit Agency Safety Plan, what we are referencing in the fiscal policy has to do with our annual safety management system, and that's the SMS. It's not a software. It's a formal top-down, agency-wide, data-driven safety management approach as prescribed by the federal government, and that's what we're talking about. So if you were to look at package page 31 for tomorrow's agenda, it clarifies what that is and is contained in greater detail in the draft Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, which we are required pursuant to federal regulation to submit to our state safety oversight agency, which would be the Colorado Public Utilities Commission.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate the clarification. Is there any other discussion on this matter at this point? just a friendly collegial reminder, between now and next month is the time to try and get any changes or recommendations through CFO Mackey and General Manager CEO about this particular matter. I would highly suggest that that communication happens sooner rather than later so that we can have a discussion about it and move forward with a good recommendation to the full body at next month's meeting. Thank you. All right, the second item listed here is the 2026 investment policy. I would like to ask Kelly Mackey, Chief Financial Officer, to present this item. Ms. Mackey.
Thank you. The 2026 investment policy is a discussion item that we will bring back to the Finance and Planning Committee on October 14, along with the 2026 fiscal policy, and ask for approval of those policies. These can be changed at any time. There have been no substantial statutory changes or investment industry changes that would impact this policy over the past year. In addition to minor grammatical and punctuation changes, we have proposed a few other changes. First is we recommend indicating that the annual listing of investments held and investment returns be within the Q4 investment report rather than in the annual comprehensive financial report, or ACFR, as staff sees this level of detail as being too much to include in the ACFR. Also, it has not historically been included in the ACFR. Next, we are updating the structure of our Treasury debt and investment teams and propose adding the titles Director of Treasury and Manager of Debt and Investments to the list of roles authorized to transact investment business on behalf of RTD. Based on the interview process underway, we may be able to remove two other titles next month when we bring this back as a discussion item. Third, the prudent investor standard did not previously reference a citation, so we've updated that and to reflect the appropriate citation. And lastly, we have added clarity to the language that RTD is authorized to issue collateralized prime commercial paper rather than commercial paper more broadly. Collateralized prime commercial paper is essentially a short-term loan a company takes by selling IOUs to investors. Prime means the issuing company is high quality and financially strong. Because it's collateralized, the IOUs are backed by assets like receivables or other securities that provide an extra layer of safety for investors if something goes wrong. So in closing, safety, liquidity, and yield in that order is what we're going for as an agency. And these proposed changes will have been reviewed by legal counsel. And Chair Guzman, I will now turn it back to you.
Thank you. Directors, are there any questions or discussion regarding this matter at this point? Director O'Keefe.
I just wanted to commend the work on the policy. I was a pension and 401k trustee for a brief minute in my life. And I think this policy reflects the amount of caution and flexibility that should reside with staff to execute. Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion? Okay, gentle reminder, between now and next month, anything that should come up, please make sure that you are communicating that promptly so that any changes that might need to be made can come forward as a strong recommendation to the board. Thank you very much. The third item is for the capital improvement projects. I would ask Kelly Mackey, Chief Financial Officer, and Jyotsna Vishwakarma, Acting Assistant General Manager of Capital Programs, to present this item. Before I kick this over to Ms. Mackey and Ms. Vishwakarma, I just want to acknowledge the work by board members and staff that went into these discussions coming forward today. Some of it's very litigious and technical work. It takes a whole team to do it. Having the citations double checked from the CRS and the previous one, or making recommendations is great work. And so this particular item that we're going into has been a long requested item. We've talked about it a lot tonight. I think this is the beginning of that conversation, not the end of it. And I would like to see this go forward in perpetuity as a part of the Finance and Planning Committee's work, given that we are the Planning Committee as well and supposed to be looking at long-term plans for how we spend money and how we plan to build infrastructure or maintain it. And so while we deal with these ongoing capital projects that roll over from year to year, thank you for bringing this forward. And it is all yours. I turn it over to you now. Oh, you're on mute.
The purpose of this discussion item is to review capital improvement projects, and I have included information on those that are greater than 2 million and recently completed, ongoing, or underway. Jyotsna Vishwakarma, Acting Assistant General Manager, Capital Programs, is here to help answer questions. Capital projects are some of the most significant investments an organization undertakes. They shape not only our infrastructure, but also how we serve and connect with our communities for decades to come. That's why the role of the board is so critical. First and foremost, the board provides strategic oversight, making sure that every project is aligned with our long-term vision and organizational priorities. Hand in hand with that is fiduciary responsibility. The board ensures that funds are allocated wisely, that budgets are realistic, and that taxpayer and stakeholder dollars are used with integrity. Another essential role is risk governance. Large projects inherently carry risks, financial, operational, and reputational. So the board helps identify and mitigate those risks early so they don't derail progress. The board also plays a role in performance monitoring, and that means tracking key milestones and making sure projects deliver the outcomes that we've promised. And underlying all of this is stewardship of public trust. Our stakeholders, whether citizens, riders, or partner organizations, expect us to act responsibly with the resources that we have and to ensure projects ultimately benefit the public good. And finally, at the heart of all of it is connecting communities between neighborhoods and between today and the future that we want to create. RTD's mission is to make lives better through connections. Staff's role is coordinating planning and execution of capital projects in a structured way based on years of planning. Remember that many of the decisions around these asset replacements were substantially made more than 20 years ago when the infrastructure was built. When staff thinks about how capital projects move from idea to reality, it's important to recognize the structured cycle that they follow. It begins with the need identification, understanding what's driving the project, whether it's asset age, condition, obsolescence, or alignment with other initiatives. And then from there, staff moves into financial planning, where needs are translated into budget inputs and long-range forecasts. And that sets the stage for planning and design, where detailed technical and business requirements are developed. And once plans are clear, staff enters the procurement phase, bringing in consultants, contractors, and services to deliver the work. Then comes the implementation and construction, where the project takes shape in the field. And finally, we reach closeout and warranty, ensuring the technical details are completed, business matters resolved, and the desired end product successfully put into service. This phased approach provides discipline, accountability, and a clear line of sight from concept all the way through to delivery. You have seen this chart before, and we last presented it not only today, but in the July 15, 2025 Finance and Planning Committee meeting. Staff aims to deliver the right money in the right year for the right requests for the right reasons. And the Transit Asset Management Plan is aligned to the 5-year financial forecast and the annual budget process, which then provides for departments to implement those plans. RTD's capital projects are completed in a structured way based on years of planning, and many decisions around these asset replacements were made many years ago, as I mentioned. So here's a 2-page list of capital projects at least $2 million in value that were recently completed, ongoing, or underway, for you to get a sense of the scope of the capital projects, their size, and their delivery cycle phases over the past couple of years. This schedule provides the year in which the budgeted funds were approved, whether the actual costs are coming in under budget or still aligned to the budget, and whether funding came from federal grants, CDOT, or local funds. Staff has also indicated whether there is a notable challenge in the project, such as delays in the delivery schedule. As a few highlights, the East Metro Triple Pit and roof replacement have been recently completed, as shown at the top. The Colorado 119 BRT is in construction. Both the Boulder HVAC and the district shops rooftop unit replacements are in design phase. The downtown rail reconstruction and Access-a-Ride and FlexRide cutaways are in implementation. The ticket vending machines are soon coming out of planning. The district shop's hoist replacement is in design, and over-the-road coaches are in planning. Next, the enterprise resource planning software upgrade is in planning. We're implementing replacement of server equipment. Staff is in design phase for HVAC replacement at Elati, the Security Command Center, and Mariposa, as well as the East Metro hoist replacement. I've noted the wheel mill is in implementation, which is a piece of equipment to keep the wheel in the correct shape so that it maintains contact with the rail. And there are a few others listed on this page. Note that other projects that do not extend the life of the assets or are under $5,000 are funded through the expense budget. And I hope this view provides you insightful information that you're looking for. And Chair Guzman, that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Director O'Keefe, your hand was first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've talked to GM CEO Johnson a little bit about this, so it's probably some of this is just the ability to get this on the record, because I think we have a good answer for it. But so with capital projects, there's a cumulative risk in your procurement choices, and not boring people with procurement selection frameworks, but how do we look at the cumulative impact of projects? I would look at that list right now and say it would be low. If we got into some sort of more significant capital expenditure like downtown rail replacement plus some other big things, there would be a cumulative impact of all the risk you're taking by issuing those contracts. And then related to that, we put a contingency on top of all our projects. How are we deciding that contingency level? And I hope the answer isn't just FTA guidance, because there's not a strong record of major rail projects being done on budget. So I think they're under contingencied in general, but what's our governance for the use of that contingency and the establishment of a contingency on top of projects? And if it is FTA, I would, dictated rules, I would argue that we need a stronger owner's contingency that goes with our major capital projects, so we don't end up with that, again, getting back to that compounded risk of each project. If they all go over budget, you're in a big problem. So if maybe someone could talk about both our risk assessment on cumulative and also our decisions on establishment and use of contingency. Thanks.
Ms. Vishwakarma, General Manager, CEO, and
Yes, thank you very kindly. I will first start and I'll yield the floor to Ms. Vishwakarma. To your question, Director O'Keefe, yes, we have talked about it in recognizing that FTA generally does not give direction relative to where we sit in reference to contingency. It's more or less looking at industry practices as a whole. Ms. Vishwakarma can speak to this as we have talked ad nauseum. Generally, there's more guidance provided within the highway industry via FHWA that we have used as a basis as we move forward, but it's really contingent upon the certain elements as relates to the types of projects that we are undertaking. So I just wanted to paint that picture as we go forward, because it's not a sole source relative to how we go about doing it here at this agency, because that's one of the first questions I had when I came into the organization, recognizing that some contingencies were 20% and some are 25%, so it does vary. But I'll yield the floor to Ms. Vishwakarma. Thank you.
Ms. Vishwakarma.
Thank you, GM Johnson. So projects are looked at individually based on what it is that we are trying to accomplish, what time frame we have to get it done in, and what are the practical constraints around the job. For instance, downtown rail reconstruction has permitting by the city and county of Denver. So projects are looked at individually, and we assess risk based on our history with that type of work and what's going on in the industry. And for bigger projects, we do formal risk assessments.
Director.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I ask a follow-up? Yes. Okay, thank you. Is this the forum? Do those risk assessments for those major projects come back to this committee I mean, in other organizations, there might be a risk committee that would carry this. Do those risk assessments come back is that something we could see? I'm not interested in getting into the establishment of what the right number is. I would just like to know if we're carrying major projects with something that has a risk assessment that might be above medium or something.
So Director O'Keefe, the risk assessments have usually been held at staff level.
Maybe this is probably a conversation for the future, but I think there's probably a threshold, and I don't know what it is. It's certainly maybe it's $100 million or something, but I think that's something that we should make a practice of reviewing, given the potential for an unexpected significant impact to budget. And so not doing management's job, but certainly understanding the risk that you're seeing in projects and making sure that we're taking out the context of the overall management of the organization would be great. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Follow up.
Oh, you are perfectly fine. Thank you very much. Director Benka, your hand was up second.
Yes, thank you. Two questions about the two of the projects. Downtown rail reconstruction was appropriated, it says here, in 2024 last year for 152 million. And then I can't remember, was it last month, our board appropriated 125 million for this project. What does anybody know the total amount for this rail reconstruction project for downtown? Is
Madam
this
CEO.
related? Actually, I assume it is.
Madam CEO.
If I may, so for all intents and purposes, it's the $152 million. We've had different phases. So basically, when we put this forward, we're extrapolating those monies within that umbrella of the $152 million.
But we just appropriated 125 million. So is this in addition to the 152 million?
No, it's from that no, it's not in addition to, it comes from the $152 million. When we brought this project forward to the board, recognizing the authority level, the delegation of authority and the interest in the project, we were providing an overall estimate for what the project phases would entail. And so I made a commitment going forward that we would apprise the board relative to where we are under the delegation of authority that has been afforded to the general manager and CEO position. And we wanted to ensure that there was an understanding at the board level of what those projects consisted of.
Okay, so the total project is 152 million.
That's the monies that we have estimated going forward. Yes.
Okay, and then my second question has to do with the transit buses. It's down here for 111 million, but it just says ongoing. So just some background or detail on that. How many buses, what's ongoing, what does that mean?
Well, and if I can just clarify before we address that question, if I may, I'm talking about contract authority versus delegation. I said delegation, but I meant contract authority. So I just wanted to qualify that.
That's fine.
That's
good. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, real quick before you address the second question, the downtown rail reconstruction the downtown rail reconstruction project is an iterative process as well. It's implemented in phases, but the work is being done as the project advances. Was it 4 phases? I don't have it in front of me right now, so I cannot remember as we go through that work. And so the total cost of that project is estimated at 152, but the iterative design and the progressive build of the reconstruction is also a consideration that the board was apprised of in 2024 when you first brought this forward, correct? Yes.
Yes. And so basically, when we first brought this forward as it relates to 2024, yes, as we said, going forward, there'd be different phases of the project, and recognizing the congressional earmarks that we were afforded, that all was encapsulated in that cost of the $152 million. The largest lion's share was what we brought forward just recently relative to the $125 million that spawns for the 152.
Okay, thank you. The question about the transit buses, 111 million.
How many? 111 ongoing. What does that mean?
Could that question be repeated?
Sure. Okay, I see transit buses for 111 million and it just says ongoing. So it's pretty open and vague. So does that mean, do you know how many buses, and when you say ongoing, is it?
If I may,
Stop.
Yes, please.
relative to the question I responded to previously when we were talking about our fleet replacement plan and how we keep vehicles for a certain amount of time, this is part of our fleet replacement projects as we go forward. And so that's why it's ongoing, because there's different cycles. But I'll yield the floor to Ms. Mackey if she wants to elaborate. But typically that's what one does in the transit industry, because you have different useful life elements that are hit, and generally you do a procurement relative to certain periods of time in which you have taken delivery of those vehicles to use in revenue service.
CFO Mackey.
Right.
I will add that the word ongoing is in the approved column for the budget. So what that indicates, and what staff guided me to put on this slide, is that it wasn't approved in one particular or even two particular years. It's an ongoing approval of budgets for transit bus replacements.
So would that then mean that the dollar amount that you have here would fluctuate every year?
I can't speak to that specifically, but I could ask my team.
I'm good. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Director Gutschenritter.
Thank you, Chair Guzman. Yeah, I just, as somebody that has a lot of experience in CapEx projects, and my track record is nowhere near having 100% not being overage on cost. So I'm just very impressed by that and curious what you all contribute that to, or is it, I'm just, how have we managed to just stay under cost on all our CapEx projects? Aligned or under? Is there anything you would attribute? I mean, is it detailed requirements gathering, a very educated RFP, fixed contracts?
Madam CFO.
I clearly have less history at the organization, so I can speak to this on a limited basis. And then if anybody else would like to add, that's fine. But one thing I would call out is I believe at times that when we make these projections and we propose the budgeted dollar amounts, we have a budgeted dollar amount that's conservative in nature, so that typically if there was to be a difference in the actual amount, it's usually under what we estimated the total budget amount, because we have to appropriate the dollars. And without additional funds, they wouldn't be available if the project was to go over. So when teams are estimating, apologize for the background noise. When teams are estimating these dollar amounts, they do it basically based on a conservative estimate.
Madam CEO.
Yes, and more to the point with some of these aspects of projects going forward, there's often a not to exceed amount as we look at the contracting authority that's put forward as well. So the projects vary in reference to the elements within the capital program.
Ms. Vishwakarma.
So what I would add is that planning and delivering on a capital project takes many steps. And it takes an excellence in the people and the process involved to understand what it is we are trying to do, how many variables are there, and to put a budgetary number to say, hey, with considering all these factors, this is what we think we can deliver it in, and then keeping on track and managing our contractors. So it takes a lot of professional services, effort, and expertise to pull this off.
Well done, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Director Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair Guzman. So I was wondering, so we've had a decent amount of senior staff turnover in the last 18 months or so. So there's a number of new leaders of the different divisions that are affected by that are dealing with or doing these capital projects. that have changed over. The software architect project from 2022, I think it was, that's been in planning since 24. We now have a new chief information technology officer. And so I was kind of wondering, like, for that kind of thing, maybe, Mr. Feddersen can speak to it, like, to what degree have those changes in staffing caused us to take a new look at projects like that and say, hey, the assumptions we had with the last guy or the assumptions we had, 3 years ago, we are now looking at a different way of doing this. We're looking at different software. We're looking at a different vendor. Typically you get that when you hire somebody new in senior level. So I'm just wondering, like, how has the staff turnover affected any of these projects?
So turnover is one term of art with respect to hiring people. I don't know that there's been turnover. I know that there has been hiring that was done to replace vacancy. I would like to hand this to General Manager CEO Johnson first to begin, and then with respect to the financial and budget creation process, she can defer to whomever she would like after. Madam CEO.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. Chair. As a point of clarification, stating that we've had a lot of turnover in 18 months, I would disagree with that. We have had individuals that have retired from the organization. And as we look at where we are holistically, I would say that's typical in reference to attrition, recognizing our CFO had been here for 15 years. What would be now the coup of bus had been here for 7.5 years. So I just wanted to state that for the record, because I believe that that's not an appropriate account of what is occurring here at this organization. And Mr. Feddersen has been one that was promoted, who has been here throughout the duration, who has leaned in and has shepherded a myriad of projects very successfully. So with that, I will yield the floor to Mr. Feddersen to address the question which was posed by Director Nicholson. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, CEO Johnson and Director Nicholson. Brett Feddersen, CITO. In relation to this particular one, it's a matter of absolutely doing what you just said. Looking at our entire architecture stack, making sure that we have a good roadmap for modernizing not just our internal, but our external services, such as the Traveler Information System. In this particular one, it was around making sure that our hardware is much like with the downtown rail reconstruction, where we want to make sure that our rail is in a state of good repair. It's making sure that our infrastructure and our servers are also in a state of good repair. And we're absolutely constantly looking at what the next great decision is in terms of the architectural direction of the future.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
So maybe Madam CFO, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to put you on the spot for just a moment. When it comes to doing this type of work with respect to budgeting, the process, I would assume, is that leadership is meeting, having the discussion about what those implications are, and then they're bringing it to you and to the budgeting team to assess what that looks like in terms of dollars and cost.
Sorry, ask the question one more time.
So in terms of the question that was asked with respect to the budgeting process and the creation of the budget and the plan going forward, when new ideas or new processes are identified, we follow the same process. They just bring it to the senior leadership and have that conversation about what the costs may look like to incorporate it into the budget to make those decisions.
Yes, except for capital improvement projects, they're largely incorporated through the asset management plan and through that process. So on one of the prior slides, we discussed there's a very long process basically to have those evaluated, cost models created, evaluated based on certain variables. And then those projects are discussed, yes, among the leadership team. And then we decide from among those which we're able to include in the budget.
Right money at the right time.
Yeah.
All right. Director Nicholson, was there something further? Your hand is still up. Thank you. All right. Thank you. I know that this was a bit of a labor of love to get this done. I appreciate the format in which it's presented. It makes it pretty easy to understand for the public, and that was one of the questions that we asked early on, was to provide this in a way that was understandable. So I appreciate that. I am going to encourage other members of the body to opine on how we would like to proceed. We don't need to do it in this meeting, but let me know, send me an email, please, so I can work with our general manager, CEO, and with our CFO on an ongoing conversation with respect to this. And truly, with respect to Vice Chair Banker's request about understanding the complexity of all of our capital projects and knowing that this is something that I've asked about, Director Rusha has asked about, I'm going to ask for a SIP book right here and now that we can look at on an annual basis while we're doing this project. Please, please, please. It makes it really helpful for us to understand everything that we're carrying and everything that we're working on. I don't know that I could be any more eloquent than Director O'Keefe in how he addressed the same matter. And I know that we have multiple things going on in multiple ways, but I think it is really helpful for us to do our fiscal governance with respect to these projects and dollar amounts if we know exactly what we're working on. We also have a commitment to not wasting paper. So if that's a digital live SIP book, that's even better, because then it can be updated in real time, which is always super helpful. And that's all we have on this one. So I would like to thank you all again for your hard work. Ms. Vishwakarma, you always come through with amazing talent, and I have appreciated that every year I have worked with you on this board. Ms. Mackey, wonderful presentation. I really appreciate it. Let's bring this back. I don't know whether we do it by any midway through the year in a semester process or if it's an annual thing, but I would like to continue to have these conversations about capital improvement projects, especially given that the planning part of finance and planning can sometimes be left behind with all the financial work that we have to do. Madam CEO.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your comments, and I appreciate that going forward. As you know, there's a lot of work that we have to do here at this organization to have consolidated information. I wanted to go on record saying that you have my commitment. We will work towards that. The team and I will discern the most appropriate vehicle in which to leverage and share that with you or whomever is the chair of this committee appropriately, but we just wanted to state for the record that we needed to get our ducks in a row as we move forward. And especially since we're in this critical phase relative to our transit network as relates to asset renewal, this will be par for the course as we move forward. So thank you.
Amazing. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Under other matters, I would like to recognize and welcome to our senior leadership team from the board of directors, the following people, and I hope my list is current and correct, so please feel free to correct me if I am wrong. General Manager, CEO Johnson, Mr. Timothy Tyron, Director of Safety and Environmental Compliance and Chief Safety Officer, Mr. Patrick Preuser, Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Brett Federin, the Chief Information and Technology Officer, and Mr. Sean Ferris, the Deputy Chief of Police. We are excited to work with you and happy that you are here, as we are all one RTD and we work together to get things done. And I just want to give you a hearty welcome. Thank you for staying late for the meeting tonight, Mr. Feddersen, and others that are going to participate in meetings going forward. Are there any other matters to discuss at this point in the Finance and Planning Committee? I don't see any. I will bring up one more thing. I did receive an email from Director Nicholson. It will be more appropriate for next month's meeting, but in the meantime, I'm just going to put out this advice. In the fiscal policy, the board of directors directs staff to provide us with a high-level abbreviated version of the budget for the discussion and to put out to the public. And that is something that we can change at any time. We can also ask for more detail if we need to. I was asked by two different directors to make this point tonight as we get ready for that conversation. I believe there's a need for more information with respect to budget line items. I have counseled both of those directors to have a conversation with our general manager, CEO, and our CFO, or to provide me with more information. That being the case, You all have our current budget book and access to it. It's more than 1 page long, and that's appreciated, but I do believe that there is a need to have maybe a bit more information so we understand some of those line items. I know Director Banker loves to look at the pages and pages of information and dig through it, and I am with you. I don't necessarily want a telephone book. I think that idea just scares me out of my mind. But if it's what we need to do, it's what we need to do. I'm not suggesting that's the path we take, but there may be more communication coming to you, General Manager CEO Johnson, and through you to our Chief Financial Officer about that matter. I just want to give a heads up here while we're contemplating going into that conversation next month. It would be a really great time to look at our current budget book and analyze what we think is going to be the necessary amount of information to recommend as a committee to bring forward the 2026 budget before we really hit the ground running with that discussion item. Thank you all. Is there anything else that we need to discuss? All right. Next Finance and Planning Committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 14th. At that meeting, we will take action on the fiscal policy and investment policy presented this evening for discussion. Additionally, we'll hold our initial conversation about the 2026 budget. I encourage all directors, not just those on this committee, to join for that important conversation. Beyond the 2026 budget, we will also have a discussion on a long-range financial plan, which is the 30-year financial planning horizon for RTD, and CFO Mackey will give us a year-to-date financial update of the agency. Leading it off will be the updated sales and use tax forecast from our friends at the CU Leeds Business School. And let's get ready to rumble. We can adjourn this meeting if it is so moved by the committee.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Geisinger. With no other discussion, we will close this meeting at 8:25 and adjourn. Thank you very much. Have a good night.